for by taxpayers. Wonder how they feel about that.
No kidding. Meanwhile, there may be an end in sight. President Trump's attorney, Rudy Giuliani, tells Fox News that special counsel Robert Mueller told him 2 weeks ago that his Russia investigation could end by September 1st if Mr. Mueller is able to interview the president probably around the 4th of July.
We have not heard from the Mueller camp on this, but regardless of the end date, our next guest sees no criminal evidence against the president. He's Harvard Law professor and author of Trumped Up, still out there, still selling well, Alan Dershowitz. Professor, welcome back.
Thank you so much.
So I watched you yesterday spar with Dan Abrams. Right. I tell you what, I felt like I was in my first law class ever. It was awesome. But you didn't really have a chance to talk. We want to give you a chance to talk today.
Thank you.
In particular, you don't have an agenda. You're not going to bat for the president.
No.
But you don't see any criminal intent or action here, and you're getting really concerned for the country.
Yes, and that's why from day one I said no special counsel, no finger-pointing, no criminal prosecution. Let's have an independent, nonpartisan commission looking into this election. This election was not the finest hour. Whether there were infiltrators or spies put into the Republican camp, whether Strzok did have a hatred and an insurance policy, whether there was any cooperation with any Russian sources, we need to get to the truth. And the only way to get to the truth is an independent 9/11 type commission, and we have to prevent it from happening in the future. This election is a model of what should not happen in the future, and a special counsel is the worst way of getting to the truth.
But isn't there congressional oversight right now? I know there are a number of committees on Capitol Hill, largely run by Republicans who
or Democrats.
Right, exactly. But the Republicans are trying to get documents. They say the Department of Justice is not cooperating. The Department of Justice says, yes, we are. We're stuck.
Look, Americans do not trust congressional committees. The majority is partisan, the minority. It's what's good for the Republicans, what's good for the Democrats. Nobody asks the question what's good for Americans. And you need a nonpartisan commission of experts, people who really can dig into this, people who really have experience and who don't have an agenda.
Can't the president
finger-pointing.
Can't the president declassify the documents?
He can.
Why doesn't he?
I don't know. He should.
You think he should?
And also this stuff that we hear, oh, don't reveal the name of the informer. You know, that's often the way in which Justice Department hides what they've done.
Sure.
This is not an informer whose life is in jeopardy.
He's a 73-year-old professor. Who's going after him?
Of course. And, you know, both sides have to create much more transparency. Right. We have to find out.
Do you think the president should sit down now that we know there's a potential end date? If they were to sit down maybe in July, then Mueller's telling Giuliani maybe September 1 then could be the
That's
end
a
date.
tactic, and it's a hard one to decide unless you know all the facts. If the president can put this behind him by September 1st, by sitting down in a limited capacity with questions that he can answer, that would be a good thing. But, you know, the Mueller people could then say, oh, based on the questions and the answers,
we need to prolong it.
We need another month,
I want you to hear the new tactic that could be out there. Jonathan Swan brought this up on your show yesterday. Let's listen to what he says Rudy Giuliani might be doing now effectively.
The legal strategy hasn't changed. I mean, Emmett Flood is a quiet, careful lawyer who is doing basically the identical work that Ty Cobb was doing inside the White House. What's changed is the media strategy, which is very significant. Rudy Giuliani's job is not to do substantive, in-the-weeds legal work. His job is to go on TV and attack Robert Mueller and attack the investigation. And what we're seeing is that it's becoming a red and a blue issue, similar to the Clinton impeachment in the 90s. And if that actually happens, we're already seeing the trend lines go in that direction. If that solidifies, that's fantastic for Trump, and he knows that.
I agree completely. I think that both Mueller and Comey played into the hands of making this a partisan issue, and Americans do not want to see indictments or impeachments based on partisan issues.
You were in Israel a week ago today for the opening of the embassy. What did you see?
Well, I was in Gaza, and let me tell you what I saw. People falsely analogize it. Oh, it was a civil rights demonstration. No, it was a lynching. Hamas gave people the addresses of kindergartens and said, go lynch these Israelis. And the Israeli soldiers who I met on the border, they were the good guys.
Stopped them at the fence.
Yes, and they were trying to minimize casualties. Yes, 50 Hamas terrorists were killed, but that's because they were the lynch mob, and we should never analogize them to reasonable demonstrators. Reasonable demonstrators don't come with the addresses of children's kindergartens and hatchets and Molotov cocktails to murder as many people as possible.
Unbelievable.
What an experience, though, for you to be there for the opening of the embassy.
That was a great experience.
Yeah. Great to have you here, as always, Professor.
Thank you.
Love your insight.
All right, straight ahead, Johnny Joey Jones lost both his legs while serving our country overseas. Now he's fuming.